Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this podcast. My name is Dr. Irvin Scott, and I'd like to welcome you to Office Hours with Doc. Over the past 30 years, I, like many before me and many after, have devoted my life to America's children and its communities by working within the education ecosystem. In other words, I'm an educator. I've been a teacher. I've been a principal. I've been a district leader. I've been a nonprofit director. I've been a foundation executive. But so many before me have done those jobs, and so many people are doing those jobs, and so many people will do those jobs in the future. However, what we want to do in this podcast is look at individuals and listen to those individuals who are doing those jobs right now in order to do three things. One, we want to hear their stories, understand how they got to where they are, and what they're doing while they're there on behalf of America's children. And let's go beyond America, the world's children, because we have international perspectives that we'll be sharing. So that's the first thing. Number two, we want to better understand how these educators work within the ecosystem, not only as individual actors, because sometimes you have to do that, but more importantly, as team members to have impact. And then number three, speaking of impact, our goal is to hear how we might all work to accelerate our collective effort and impact going forward. These are the voices from the ecosystem that we'll hear in this podcast. If you've ever wondered what's going on in schools or school systems or school districts or however you think about schools in the US and the world and the lives of those individuals who are shaping children's lives, if you've ever wondered that, this is the podcast for you. Office Hours with Doc. Welcome. All right. Welcome back to Office Hours with Doc, Season 2. I am so excited to have a friend, a colleague. You know, I like calling everyone friend and colleague, and also a former student of mine, Leo Silva. I call him Leo. Leo Silva, who's doing amazing work here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with the Attollo program. But he's also a recent graduate of Harvard Graduate School of Education. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Dr. Irvin Scott. I'm delighted to have you. This is Office Hours with Doc, where we bring educators from across the pre-K-12 education ecosystem to talk about their trajectory, how they got to where they are, what they're doing right now, and what they think about the state of things right now. And so let me jump right in with Leo. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome
Uh,
to Office Hours with Doc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott. I really appreciate it. Anytime I have a chance to just have a conversation with you, I feel like I'm speaking with an urban legend, because many people don't know, but Doc, spent a lot of time here in Lancaster, where I'm at right now, and your name gets around the community for
Mm.
doing really impactful work at the school district of Lancaster here, where we're located, and then at Harvard, of course. But again, it feels unreal and puts me a little bit on edge, which I think it's good. But thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for that, Leo. You need not be on edge. You're doing amazing work. It's our honor to have you. We're just going to have a conversation about a few things. We'll just start off with this question that a lot of people wonder as it relates to education leaders, and that is, how did you get to where you are right now? Tell us a little bit about that trajectory.
Wow. I think that leadership and your story and your journey are the same thing. I think the your growth to leadership is your growth to mental fortitude, and that is just intertwined with who you are. So I'll give you the abridged version of kind of where my roots started. So I was born in the Dominican Republic in a small village called Villa Altagracia, which is about 40 minutes away from Santo Domingo, from the capital. And I lived there until I was about 8 years old. And I don't have too many memories of living there, but I know a few things that did occur when I was young. And number one, that was that we grew up in frugality. We grew up with very little. I remember not having shoes to wear. I remember not vividly, but having to carry water, which now I can look back and say, wow, the fact that I had an opportunity to see life in that way and then
Mm.
see it in the US context is I think it really brings perspective to the world,
Mhm.
right? I think it gives me just a more global perspective. And when we say that a lot of people are living on less than $2 a day, I can relate to that a little bit. Um, but I remember vividly that I was about 7 years old. I was standing in my room on a cold, wet, and muddy floor. I was looking out the window, and beds were floating down the streets. My neighbor's roof was ripping apart. And it was 1998, and Hurricane George was destroying the Dominican
Mm.
Republic. And I always like to share that vivid memory because that memory, I think, really unlocked something for me,
Mhm.
right? It was so salient. Not only that, but what happened afterwards, which was people came outside and started helping each other rebuild.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I felt a deep sense of community. And I think I've been eager to find that and create community since then. So when I eventually moved to Lancaster, that's what I was in search for. When I went to Millersville University and studied undergrad, that's what I was in search for. And then at Attollo, that's what really we're all about, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. So I think that my leadership journey and the journey of resilience and developing a little bit of mental fortitude are one and the same. And I
Mhm.
think I can speak for most leaders. That's probably the case. If
Mhm.
you are leading any organization, you're going through some hard times, whether it's now in the past or in the future. And building some resilience and mental fortitude is really important in your journey and your story. Really is the impetus of that journey and that path towards resilience. So
Thank you.
hopefully that answered your question, man.
Oh,
What was your
yeah,
journey? I sped through and there's so much that I didn't say, but again, I don't want to talk for the whole 35 minutes
that's all right.
before we get to any other questions.
So, thank you so much for sharing that. I don't know if I fully had an understanding of that sort of Dominican Republic foundation. I'm sure you probably shared it in a class before, but I appreciate you sharing it on this podcast because it explains a lot to your point around community. When you get to Millersville, I mean, you're in the education sector now.
Mhm.
Um, Two questions in one. One is talk to us a little bit about how you landed in education, and also talk to us a little bit about Attollo. Like you go to Millersville. Did you always think you were going to be an educator? Did you always think you were going to lead an education organization? What does that look like in terms of a transition to work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think my entire life I've been in between two things. And then I didn't know that they could be combined,
Mm.
right? So I remember in fifth grade, I was living as a fifth grader, grew up low income here in Lancaster City, and in my small room in my parents' basement, there was a little poster with my face on it that said "Future Fortune 500 CEO." All right. Um,
Your parents did this for you, or you did this for yourself?
I did this, and I'm sure that my fifth grade teacher at the time,
Oh,
Dr. Kozer now, probably influenced that a lot, right?
I got you. Got you.
And and she and I mention her right now because she recommended me for Project Forward Leap, which you are familiar with, which is a program that some inner city youth from Lancaster, nearby city called York, Harrisburg, and Philadelphia had the opportunity to go to. And I think that really changed my life and really
Mm.
taught me the value of just additional and supplemental educational enrichment and the value of it. So I didn't know that then, but that's what I was receiving that later I would connect the dots on. Um, so, you fast forward to 11th grade for me, and I um I have a daughter. As a junior in high school, I learned that
Mhm.
I'm going to have a daughter, and my world is changed forever.
Mhm.
I think that, when I first saw my daughter's eyes, that was the first time I realized that somebody was looking back at me.
Mhm.
And I got a little bit more serious and a little bit more mature. I had to grow up a little bit quicker.
Mhm.
And fortunate for me, my family was a lot more supportive than I thought they would be. Um, and so I went to Millersville and was able to go to Millersville. And I was just recently telling a friend that I can't imagine. I took my daughter to meet my college friends, to meet them at the dorm. I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking,
You
but
were
that
proud. You were
right, I was
excited.
proud, which was cool. Would I do that again or not? With knowledge, I'm not sure. But Millersville was really hard. So originally I went to Millersville for math, then I switched to math education, going kind of back and forth, kind of econ, math, and then eventually I switched to economics. So I got really interested in the human development side and community development side of economics. And I think my college professor, Dr. Madden, Kirsten Madden, um, was another person, yet another mentor that really poured into me. I remember junior year of college going to her and say, I, I can't do it anymore. I was working 30 to 35 hours a week at R.R. Donnelley, which is a manufacturing printing company, and Willow Valley, a retirement community, while being a full-time student and being a dad. Um,
Wow.
and I wanted to throw in the towel. And she said, "You're not. I won't let you do it." Um, and she mentored me. She was my coach at that time. I didn't have that language before. She was just a person, right? That I can just go to and have a conversation with, which is the most important thing you can have in your life is just people. Um, and so, yeah, that those instances where I found myself in really challenging places, but people stepped up in my life or gave me an opportunity that I didn't see. Really later on, I've connected the dots later, right? And I said, no wonder I'm passionate about youth advocacy, right?
Mhm.
No wonder I want to help other people when they're in moments of transition, um, or they're unsure about their next steps. And again, it's because I had the opportunity to receive mentors when it was really difficult. Um, so, I meet Jordan Steffi, who was the founder of Attollo, my junior year of college, and he invites me out to an event, and it just clicks. It makes sense. It puts kind of my life into perspective, and Attollo and mentoring students and helping them with the college process that they transition from high school to college. It was like I didn't know I was really passionate about this, but there was something in me that always knew.
Mhm.
So that was my journey to really get and invest in education. It was passion that was cultivated over time, slowly, and there was a lot of powerful moments that I didn't even realize there were powerful moments probably at the time. They were just really helpful moments for me.
Yeah, passion that was cultivated over time through adversity, through challenges, through highs. I love the story about your daughter and taking her to Millersville, being really proud of her. You mentioned a couple of organizations that are very familiar to people who live in Lancaster, what it's
Yeah,
R.R. Donnelley or Willow Valley. These are places that many youth get connected to. You talked
yeah.
about mentors and professors who have poured into you and would not give up on you. Just really, really powerful. And so, how does that all? And you also mentioned Jordan Steffi, a colleague who I think he founded Attollo,
Yeah.
still on the board and just doing amazing work in the Lancaster area. So, if someone were to ask you, what is the mission of Attollo? What are they up to? How would you describe that? And I'll put in this sort of ecosystem question.
Mm.
Where do you think they are in the education ecosystem? Like, I
Yeah.
think about this ecosystem work all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the ecosystem. From grad school. I still remember the picture with the star.
There you go.
But the abridged version, I won't share too much of Jordan's story, because he's an amazing individual. But you know, he gets to the University of Maryland on a full scholarship, and he feels two things. He feels a deep, deep sense of gratitude because he's got an opportunity that a lot of people that were coming from where he came from didn't. And then he also felt a second emotion, and it was a a deep sense of guilt that some of his friends weren't with him, that there were people who he would say were more talented than he was or took school a little bit more serious than he did, but didn't have the opportunity because they didn't have a mentor. And so he founded Attollo with that in mind, giving students the opportunity to explore college as an option. So that's what Attollo really is all about. How I like to explain it to a junior in high school is imagine you walking to your dining room table, about to have the college conversation with your parents. We want Attollo to be the first thing to come to mind. We want some of the mentorship and advice that you've heard from us to be at the forefront
Mm.
of how you approach that conversation. And those are very difficult conversations for a junior in high school. And so that's really what we do. But I think that what makes us unique is the way in which we approach it. And I don't think it comes as a surprise, especially for you. I think you get this. And is that we start with trust. We start with really trying to get to know the individual. So in order for a student to become a part of a title, they go through a 6-week rite of passage.
What grade do you go after?
11th grade.
11th grade.
We're
Okay.
talking about 11th and 12th graders, right? They get invited down to the principal's office, and we say that we're going to invite you to do a talo, and we write their name in gold in this envelope. They take it home, take it to their parents, and then about a week later, they come to an orientation. And 2 days after that, at 5:30 in the morning, they meet us at their school. And so for the next 6 weeks, we're doing three things with them. Number one, we're getting to learn their story, and we're helping them share their story in an empowering way,
Mhm.
right? And building trust and community in a cohort of about 30 students from their school. Um, Number two, they're learning some leadership skills. So we're doing leadership development. So we're teaching them about having a strong mind and an open mind, competition and resilience, and the importance of resilience, accountability, sacrifice, and finish strong. And then number three, they have to learn how to solve the Rubik's Cube in
The
under 9
Rubik's Cube.
Exactly. So every single student then learns how to solve the Rubik's Cube during that 6-week period. And at the end, it all culminates with a final interview where they share a little bit about, with four professionals in a room, a little bit about what they've done during the last 6 weeks. They share their story, right? They answer some questions, and then they slide the Rubik's Cube and they finish it. The professionals are rating them on a scale. And if they pass, they become an Attollo scholar. But what we know happens is that they feel like they've earned it, number one. When you feel like you've done something challenging with a group of people, you also come close. You also get close together. Going back to community and why it was so vivid in the Dominican Republic, right?
Mm.
It's because we've just faced a difficult time.
Right.
And yet we came together as one and we finished strong. We helped each other rebuild in my case. And for the students, maybe it's, that realization like, wow, I can do hard things. I can solve the Rubik's Cube. I can do anything I set my mind to. And if I have some mentors in place and I can lay out a process. And what we hope is that that then translates to exploring what their passions may be and exploring college as an option. So
Beautiful.
that's what Attollo does.
Let me ask you this. If someone were to ask you two questions, one is, what is the goal? Is the goal like, do you want to place them in a particular college, a particular type of college? Is that one of the goals? I know the leadership skills and so forth and so on, but is the ultimate goal to send them to a particular school or a type of school? And how do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, and I think the easiest way to answer it is sharing actually the criteria that we tell the principals for selecting the students that they invite down. And what we tell the principal is that we want a cohort of 10 to 15 low achieving students academically, 10 to 15 middle achieving students academically,
Okay.
and 10 to 15 high achieving students academically. Which, by the way, most people don't know this. Our students don't know this, but they get to recruit and look around and say, and a lot of times ask themselves, like, why am I here?
Mm,
And it's because they're experiencing a few things. Number one, they're looking around and saying, there's people that are certainly like me. Some of these other students are in my classes.
mhm,
Some of them look like me, but there's certainly a lot of people that I don't know that are
Interesting.
nothing like me. These people are not in my class. Either they're in, higher achieving classes, maybe they're in the honors class and the student isn't. And the honor student is saying the same thing. Like, wait, I've seen this student in my honors literature class, but I've never seen this student at this school, or maybe I've seen him in a distant, walk in the hallways, and we don't have the same friend group. And it breaks stigma. That's
Mhm,
that's really, really important, right? And I think because of the diversity and the intentionality in the diversity of thought that we decide to give as a criteria, we're going to have students go to an array of different
Gotcha.
places after high school. So no, not all of our students go to a four-year college or university, and it's not necessarily the goal. The goal is to maximize on their potential.
Mm,
And I think that, and we believe that college should be an option you should explore as a result, as well as other options. We had a military night the other night where we brought
mhm,
recruiters in so students can learn about the military. A lot of our students also go to trade schools. Um, and of course, a lot of our students go to colleges and universities that are local and all over the country
mm,
as well. And there's so much beauty when they all come back as alumni and get to connect with each other and realize, wow, actually the power is actually in the diversity
mm,
of thought,
mm.
right?
That's
And that's
beautiful.
what actually typically allows someone to really capitalize on their potential, is number one, feeling like they belong. So belongingness is really at the center of what we do first. Trust and belonging in people's stories. Because without that, you don't explore other things, right? Not only do I think like we're having a mental health crisis, we're having an identity crisis as a society and as young people. When I talk to young people on a daily basis, few things come to mind. Like they always say the same things. I don't know what I want to do,
Mm,
right? We hear this very, very often. Or I don't even know where to start. What should I explore?
mm,
And a lot of times, the typical advice is, well, do some research, right? Go out and explore. And what we believe is that that's not what you do first. What you do first is do some research, learn about yourself, learn
Internal
your,
research.
right, exactly. Do some radical self-introspection before you go out and decide what you want to learn from the world, right?
Mm,
Learn what your story is all about. So that is an approach that we take.
That's
And
powerful.
that should come first before you decide on what's next, right? So the end goal looks different for every student, just to put a bow around that. And
Yeah.
we think that's okay. But we track it all, and there's obviously measures of success, but some of our like best success stories have been students that have gone to the military and a trade school.
Mhm,
Uh, but we've also had a student that, we asked them, like, what schools and universities do you want to go to? And they mentioned all local schools and schools that they knew of. They knew their name,
mm,
uh, and then ended up going to USC and Princeton.
mhm.
Right. So we've had both of those. And we now have 1,600 students that have gone through our program. And so we see the variety. And there's a lot of power in that. And that's what we want to see, honestly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
A couple of quick rapid questions. One is, what would you say to someone who says, isn't that the role and responsibility of guidance counselors?
Yeah, to your point about the coherence framework, it's yes, and right. We think that guidance counselors play a crucial role, but many times they are tapped out, right? They don't have the capacity that it takes to also help students with their mental health issues that they may be facing, which students go to them typically first in that school. And I think those things should take precedence. Um, and then also have the capacity to do some college advising, but that's just a lot to ask from a counselor. We don't think there is enough counselors. We don't think there's enough school psychologists. Sometimes there's not enough teachers in a class. Sometimes teachers are having, 30, 40 students. Yeah, I'm like, how does that even work? So that is the role that we play. We play, this technical support outside educational enrichment organization that supplements a school. We're not here to replace schools or replace teachers at all. I received a really beautiful email the other day, and I tried to send one back, and it was this counselor that said, "You should reach out to this student." And she
Mm.
gave me a rundown of the conversation that they had, and told the student that she would do that. And then I did the same, I talked to the student and I asked the student, where do you want to take this conversation? Do you want to have an
Oh, that's
above the
awesome.
line conversation, a below the line conversation? Do you want to talk about the things that you're going through in your story and be introspective? Or do you want to talk about kind of what's next for you and let them
Mm,
decide? And then I jot it down and I send it to them. And I was like, that's what this is all about.
mm.
That's what it looks like to be a supplement to schools. And I can't say it works that smooth all the time, but that is the goal. All
That's
right.
awesome.
I think
How
there's an
how
opportunity for a lot of organizations to do that.
how long has Attollo been in existence?
We've been around now for 15 years
15
total,
years. Mhm.
but we've rebranded. So we started as the Children Deserve a Chance Foundation, and then rebranded to Attollo. And number one reason for that, just very quickly, is that we didn't think that rang with students. Who wants to be a part of the Children Deserve a Chance Foundation? Right? It doesn't sound as empowering.
Mhm.
And if there's anything that we know is that the 10th grade and 11th grade boy, male of color to be specific,
Mm,
is the hardest student to engage.
mm.
And they want to be a part of things that are really empowering. And
Yeah,
so Attollo means to rise, to elevate. And I think that's a message that a lot of students can get behind.
yeah, that's powerful. I know someone's asking, what does Attollo mean?
Yes, it means to rise up in
To
Latin,
rise up.
elevate. Uh,
Beautiful.
so that's what we, intend to do is help students um, elevate their game in some ways and rise up to the occasion. Sometimes is rise up even further than they are right now, or rise up from adversity, right?
Yeah,
Be more than the adversity that they grew up with.
beautiful. As we bring it to a close, one other question that I just got to ask. You're a leader of an organization, a nonprofit organization. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the core principles of your leadership, like how do you lead people? How do you think about leadership
Mhm.
as the leader of Attollo? Incidentally, you reminded me we really should have Jordan Steffi on this
Absolutely.
podcast also, the founder of this organization. So we'll make that happen. So talk to us a little bit about leadership and your vision for leadership. And if you can, as we close, talk a little bit about leadership in this time that we're living in from
Mm,
from an education perspective in particular, but you can talk about it in other ways that you feel comfortable as we wind things down.
yeah, I think that so I think what's really important in today's society and something that we've committed to is to this near peer model, which means that we want staff members and professionals that can relate to our students and that can empathize with what our students are going through right now. Um, and that means that we need to have diversity of thought within staff. That's number one. Um, if our staff is representative of our students, I think we have a chance of having impact because there is that gets student that engages students at least a little bit more natural. That's just
Mhm.
one additional barrier they don't have to go through. So that's one. Number two is that you have to treat your staff um, just like you would treat your students, right? So a lot of times when we think about programming, we want to elevate programs. We want students to feel a sense of pride and insight and connection, right? And we think of icebreakers before they get to know each other, and we think about how they're going to learn with each other. We should be doing that for staff members as well.
Absolutely.
So continuous learning together. So we take months out of the year where we're all reading a book together, right?
Mm.
One of the books that we're going to be reading this summer is actually Unreasonable Hospitality. It's the yellow book back there. So we'll be reading that as a staff over the summer. In the spring, we usually do a professional development series where we get to learn from community and leaders that come in and share their knowledge. And I think that levels out the playing field. That just shows staff, oh wow, we're all in this together. We're
Mhm.
all learning, and we're all trying to implement and practice those things that we're learning. Um, and there is that makes things a little bit less of a hierarchical structure, right? I remember the class real, right? And how that started, how we started with our stories.
Race,
It's
equity,
really
and
nice for
leadership.
that. Race,
That's what
equity, and leadership.
there you
Uh,
go.
and it was so good to just get a baseline of where people are at. And so that's an approach that we certainly take as well with our staff and our students. So we try to do exactly what our students do. Our interview questions, some of them are the exact same questions that we ask our students when they interview.
Mhm.
Uh, so we do not try to reinvent the wheel, and we try to make it as seamless as possible between being a staff member here and being a mentor. It should be almost the same, right? Um, we're learning just like they are, and we're continuing to grow, and we're trying to develop leadership skills that then we're also trying to teach, which should make things pretty easy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Um, any comment on the how the state of play? First of all, do you feel what am I talking about? I'm talking about we have a new administration. The politics are a little more divisive in the country.
Yeah.
Does that show up in your organization or in how you think about the work, um, or not?
Yeah, not as much as potentially other organizations, but
Mhm.
I think something that has potentially a bigger impact right now in our society, I think, is technology. Uh,
Mhm.
I think that how students are approaching the college application is changing and
Mhm.
will change tremendously. Um, and as a result, the people in admissions are going to change. Like we shouldn't expect anybody to have any grammatical errors now, right? Like you could run your college essay through ChatGPT if you really wanted to after you finish your college essay.
Mhm.
Um, but those are just a quick example. I think there is so much to be excited for.
Mhm.
We have so much access to information, and and that is beautiful because we can get questions answered that we wouldn't have answers to before.
Mhm.
But what's scary is that as well. Um, when I think about how we develop critical thinking in students, it's interesting because before, just not before, 5 years ago, not even, just like 3 years ago, when you had a question that you didn't know the answer to, you will type it in Google. And what Google would do is it will give you a bunch of websites and articles to
Mhm.
read. And you would have to choose which one, right? And we would talk about sources, etc.
Very
Do
true.
you remember that? Um, do you remember that as if it was a long time ago? It was literally 2 years ago. But now when you ask ChatGPT, you know what it does? It gives you one answer.
Mhm.
And that is scary because we're letting the engineers in Silicon Valley decide what the right answer is,
Mm,
right? We're not given exhaustive options. And so our students are growing up in a society where they can get one answer and they believe it to be right.
okay.
Uh, and that is a very scary thought. And I think that changes how people think about developing problem solving skills
Mm,
altogether. Um, and how that relates to Attollo is that how people approach writing has changed. How people approach what college is the best college has
mm,
changed. Again, going back to that eventual research that you would do in different colleges, now you ask ChatGPT, which is the best college for me based
mm,
on both, and it's going to give you that one answer, and you're just like, wait, and then you're going to type in, give me more, and it'll give you other options. That is scary
mm.
to think about because it takes the critical thinking out of it and some of those skills that you would develop in a process um, that you had before. So yeah, that part I think that is current in society is pretty scary.
And it's
Uh,
very much on your mind and
oh
on the
yeah,
mind of your
oh yeah.
organization. So helpful. So in closing, Leo, first of all, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the great work that you do at Attollo. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for taking the experiences that could have set you back and kept you back and using them to accelerate you forward so that you can create opportunities for others. That's what you're doing, and you're doing it in powerful ways. Um, you have kids. I ran into you and your kids and your wife in
Mhm.
the store. And so I'll end with this question. How does having, and you have your older daughter, how has having children affected the way you think about doing work in education? And give us that in 35 to 40 seconds.
Yeah, I think the easy filter is this the advice that I would give my daughter?
Mm,
And, for a long time, she's in high school now, and I mentor high school students. And so more recently, I found myself saying that to myself. And it's like,
mm,
let me make sure that I would give you actually the same advice. So let me put myself in dad's shoes and educator shoes and college advisor shoes, right? At the same time. And I think that that's been the biggest change right now. At least for me being a dad and being in this space. Um, yeah, I think it's fascinating. And now I'm thinking about my little ones as well and where they're going to be going to school and all that good stuff and who's going to be the next generation of people that are going to, pour into them. And so selfishly, when I find myself mentoring students, I think like that's going to be my daughter's, right? My daughter's
mhm.
coach. That's going to be my daughter's mentor one day. So I'm living in these two weird worlds right now where
Yeah.
I was a very young dad and I'm like relatively speaking, I'm an older parent as
Mm.
well, which is really interesting. So I felt like I'm living both dynamics at the same time right now.
Yeah. Thank you for your candor on that. And I'm sure you're finding ways to have it inform your leadership and your impact, both professionally and personally. My friend and brother, thank you so much for joining us. And to all of our followers, thank you so much for joining Office Hours with Doc. This is season 2, and we are so grateful to have Leo Silva join us from the Attollo program.